News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. Be a part of the show by calling 915-544-KTSM, 915-544-5876, or comment online on our stream at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. It's 4 p.m. Mountain Time, and that means it's time to talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. Again, we always mention all of those places in order to, well, give you all the best chance to know where you can get at us, particularly since, vagaries of technologies, accounts, banning, all those kind of things. One may be more or less accessible to you all. So understanding that fully, of course, we'll always be on air as long as we got that signal and that tower is still standing. It's not actually up on the mountain. It's actually like way out in the desert. Vagaries of AM radio. I am sure that some out there could explain it better to us. Sean comes to mind here, but in any case, point is that you can always get at us the ways we are, and interact with us, particularly over on the social media. That's why we have particular emphasis on those, but don't worry, we have not forgotten those all in radio land. That's why we still address that and have those issues, and a jam-packed show for you today. I might need to find a different adjective, descriptive phrase, because I feel like I'm going to be saying that through the end of, let's call it the year. Definitely November or middle November, probably more than anything. Election days, more specific for you than anything else, because, we're cramming in the candidate and nominee interviews to try and keep you all best informed and know what they are saying, as you hopefully are either very well informed and already know all of these things that headed to the ballot box, or are going to use this as you go to the ballot box there. So that's part of the reason we keep doing and harping on these things. And so to that end, we have a couple of candidates, or nominees in these cases, on the show today. In a few minutes, we are going to be joined by Veronica Escobar, of course, Congresswoman representing the Texas 16th Congressional District, the urbanized parts, more or less, of El Paso County, as it kind of comes down to now. So she'll be joining us by phone here shortly, and a little bit later in the program, also going to be joined by John Lira, Democrat nominee for the Texas 23rd Congressional District. So getting some of those perspectives, and this will be, at least we've now touched on all of the congressional races in our area, but more to come there, to be sure. We'll be announcing more when we have some more of those interviews coming out for you. But that's what we got on tap for you today, along with a few other things, including a very interesting little bit of it's a campaign advertisement, basically, but not for any specific campaign, but rather for the El Paso Community Progress Bond. I got into my mailbox, a couple of copies, actually. I haven't checked it for a couple of days. That's on me. But the information about it, the way it's being put forth, let's strengthen El Paso's routes. Reading off of it here for those of you, again, can't see in radio land. Encouraging a vote yes, and focus on early voting for this one. So this must be my early voting version that I probably should have been looking at last week. But so the way they put it forth here, there's a couple of interesting points being made. The way they break down the actual focus on streets for residential roads, arterial roads, connecting neighborhoods, and traffic safety. So that's the $237 million and change part of the bond. Prop B, Parks and Rec, for the $20 million and change. They all have this $20 million here. All Abilities Playground, additional shade structures, and neighborhood improvement. And Proposition C, the Environment, $5 million and change. I think it's like 5.2 technically, with the Climate Action and Urgent Energy Plan. Now, one of the more interesting parts on here, I mean, we've broken down a lot of these things. This is a little bit more specific than I've seen it in a lot of ways. Why they put this all into like mailers and not also like online? They do have a website listed here, elpasoprogress.com, if you want to see a version of this for yourself and you didn't get it in your mailbox. We also have Ida Beza Gardner over on the social media. Thank you for joining us there. One of those more candidate interviews we'll be having, not squeezing that one in quite today, but coming up early next week. Certainly we'll get that date exactly once we have it out. But so if you want to see it on elpasoprogress.com, one of the more interesting parts that, well, kind of in a way relates to what UMC has also had on there, is that, and quoting directly, by state law, if any of the propositions fail, the city is not permitted to issue certificates of obligation for 3 years following the bond election. So that's, I think, a little bit more on the what's at stake here and why there might be a little bit more sauce on this than usual. Not that there's like a lack of discussion and those kind of things going on here, but I mean, seriously, there's a lot that is being put into this and a lot of focus coming out from both, elected officials, members of the community. So I guess I should say all of elected officials, community, and even groups involved in this because, well, much like there was, again, similar-ish process, but not exactly the same. The one involving the, of course, UMC potential certificates of obligation bond, that was more on the, well, will it be non-voter approved or voter approved debt? And that conversation is still kind of ongoing. It can't be issued as certificates of obligation bond now, but if it still comes onto the ballot or ends up being completely revamped, gets a little bit too technical for me to know and for me to certainly say 100%. But then also, it does look like here is that this is kind of a all or nothing kind of push, because if this doesn't work, then the city can't do it unless, well, they push it into the regular budget, which would have other repercussions. So I'm not saying there aren't ways. Anytime you're dealing with legalities, governments, those kind of things, there's a whole lot of ways things can be done. But that's an interesting wrinkle that I guess I hadn't fully realized. And so that's why I do find it useful to look at flyers like these for what they're worth. Austin Redfern, yes, now it actually is Friday Eve, and if you're already sipping on the Mai Tais or whatever your preferred of choice there is, or just a nice cool glass of water. I've been drinking a lot of that today. Running around doing all the things it takes to do these kind of things. Good afternoon to you as well there, Austin. And so we got the comments going on there, but we're going to go ahead and hit that first break early already because, again, as mentioned, are expecting to have conversations right now with, again, more of our congressional representation and, of course, those that are going to be running for the race. Again, specifically going to be having on Congresswoman Veronica Escobar, Democrat, representing the Texas 16th Congressional District. So got to take that break and be back with that interview, asking some of the questions both on what she is running on as well as some of the big issues that we have certainly been discussing, and and more commentary coming on the bond as well. Keep those comments coming. We'll pop up some of the more relevant ones. Seems like the comments coming in correctly again today. Knock on wood. Otherwise, back after this break with more Talk El Paso. Again, comments coming in, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch phone lines a little bit later, as we usually do, but jamming it in again today as much as we can. So stay tuned. More Talk El Paso after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
I-10 westbound, it's bumper to bumper, 9-minute delays from Hawkins to Reynolds. I-10 eastbound from Trans Mountain to the 54 Patriot, it's 6 to 10-minute delays. Multi-vehicle accident happening in the lower valley on Border Highway eastbound at Zaragoza. All vehicles are up on the right shoulder. I-10 westbound at Viscount, a disabled vehicle blocking the right shoulder. And slow traffic from an accident Edgemere eastbound at Tierra Este. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
As you crunch the numbers trying to get the most out of your dollar, we'll throw in a $1,000 inflation bonus. Much better. Listen every hour from 9 a.m. through 5 p.m. weekdays for your chance to win $1,000.
Listen to win $1,000 every hour, weekdays from 9 a.m. through 5 p.m. It's the 1,000 inflation bonus on News Talk 690 a.m.
This report is sponsored by Lowe's. It's pro time because at Lowe's, it's Provember. Over 30 days to save big. Full of more inventory, more Lowe's MVP's bonus points, and more of the deals you deserve. Because it always pays to be a pro at Lowe's. Save all Provember long.
At Affordable Dentures and Implants, that moment when we see a patient smile is everything to us. And we're proud to have helped millions of patients improve their smiles through affordable tooth replacement options. So whether it's a single tooth, full dentures, or dental implants, Affordable Dentures and Implants is here to help you. Go ahead and smile. Our new El Paso office, led by Dr. Kiso Uradiegu, is now open at 11917 Gatewood Boulevard West in Las Palmas Marketplace near Kohl's. To schedule a free new patient consultation, call 1-800-DENTURE or visit affordabledentures.com. That's 1-800-DENTURE or visit affordabledentures.com. Again, our new El Paso office is now open at 11917 Gatewood Boulevard West in Las Palmas Marketplace near Kohl's. Affordable Dentures and Implants. Go ahead and smile.
Go ahead and smile.
Get ready for the smartest bundle in streaming. 6 streaming services for the intellectually curious, featuring Curiosity Stream with the best collection of documentary films and TV shows, Psalm TV, and great stories from the world of wine, Tastemade for the fun side of food and travel, Topic with the best thrillers and crime stories, and so much more. From nature to history, technology to food, mystery to adventure. Get 6 streaming services for one low price at less than $6 a month. It's the best deal in streaming. Learn more and sign up now at smartbundle.com.
Finding great candidates to hire can be like, well, trying to find a needle in a haystack, but not with ZipRecruiter. Its powerful technology actively finds and invites qualified candidates to apply to your job. So while other companies might deliver a lot of hay, ZipRecruiter finds you the needle in the haystack.
See why 4 out of 5 employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. Try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/free. That's ZipRecruiter.com/free.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so. A lot of ways to interact with the show, particularly before we get to the phone lines, as we will a little bit later. But if you really want to add your 2 cents, a lot of people commenting over there already. Richard Lewis, Louis Pinato, John Brazelton, Glenn Stewart, good afternoon to you as well. RJ, Austin Redfern, and Ida Beza Gardner can, of course, be commenting throughout the show here. But, of course, election season is upon us here. And, I forgot to hit the button for the music. But you get the idea of that we are definitely campaigns going on strong. Of course, early voting going on right now through November 4th, and then Election Day on November 8th. It's kind of like, feels like countdown to Super Bowl here. Can I say if we're not talking about the Super Bowl? In any case, we have a lot of stuff that we're breaking down, a lot of candidates and nominees we're bringing in. And so to that end, joining us now via phone, we are joined by Congresswoman Veronica Escobar, representing the Texas 16th Congressional District as a Democrat. Thank you very much for joining us here today.
Hi, Andrew. Thanks for the opportunity.
Absolutely happy to have you on to talk about some of the important both issues affecting the district right now, and of course your campaign as part of it here. So of course there are a lot of important issues that have been coming up, a lot of things that our audience among others have been mentioning here, but wanted to delve into a few of the major ones that, well, they're related to of course these other topics, but a few of the major planks that you have of your re-election platform here. And of course one of the ones that has been pointed to as probably one of, if not the most important thing in general for this election. Of course, local issues very similar, but jobs and the economy and all the things related to it have been pinpointed, again, nationwide as one of the biggest issues that people will be heading to the polls at the top of mind here. So when it comes to your policies and what you're looking at, what are some of the things that you're putting forth both from your record and for a potential next term of office?
Well, thanks so much, Andrew. And absolutely, the economy is top of mind for everyone, especially those of us in Congress who worked so hard to reduce costs for Americans, because we know that inflation, especially in a community like El Paso, really has a significant impact. And so there's been a whole host of bills that I have worked on and that we have passed in the House of Representatives, some of which have become law, that will help. But the 2 main things causing inflation are the supply chain issues that arose right after COVID and fuel costs. With regard to the supply chain issues, we are seeing some of that alleviated, but we passed the Chips and Innovation Act, which will bring manufacturing, specifically manufacturing of semiconductor chips, which are in everything from your dishwasher to your car, back to the United States. It won't just create jobs, but it will prevent future supply chain snarls so that we never have to deal with the kind of supply chain issues we dealt with post-pandemic. And then as it comes to fuel costs, we in the House passed legislation that would have gone after big oil. I don't know if you saw some of the headlines today about Shell posting record profits. The cost per barrel for oil it is at the same number that it was when gas prices were about $1 lower. And so these oil companies are posting record profits. So a lot of it is about greed. Not a single Republican in Congress joined us on passing that legislation to hold big oil accountable. There are other things that we have done, however, to address fuel costs. And much of that came through the Inflation Reduction Act in terms of not just ramping up oil production in the United States, which is now higher than it was under the prior administration, but also at the same time trying to rapidly move us toward renewable energy, because we've just taken far too long to make that pivot. And we want to make sure that Americans have freedom, energy independence, freedom through renewables as much as possible. You know, there is nothing that will eliminate inflation overnight. It's not an on and off light switch. And anyone who pretends that that's the case is either completely ignorant of how the economy works or is lying to the American public. And so, you know, we've got to have a holistic plan. It's what Democrats have done. We got some good numbers today about GDP growth. It's a pretty remarkable swing from last month. We're still seeing really solid job numbers. We're going to continue to create jobs in America with manufacturing and innovation made in America. We've got a lot more work to do, but I'm proud of some of the work we've done so far. One more thing I'd like to add. We have provided the largest Social Security increase for seniors that they've seen in a long time. Additionally, through the Inflation Reduction Act, we're going to continue to lower costs. We took on Big Pharma, and we are lowering the cost of prescription drugs, capping insulin. And so it's a combination of addressing the supply chain, addressing fuel issues, but also lowering the costs for Americans.
On those 2 points, then, briefly following up on this before we move on to some of the other very important campaign points here, on both the CHIPS Act, which is going to set a trajectory, but not going to be obviously be able to be seen overnight, so to speak, as you refer to it, but then also in some of those provisions, particularly when it comes to prescription drugs and insulin pricing, a lot of those things don't kick into place until 2023 or 2024 or even longer in some cases. So for those that are saying that these situations need to be addressed now or more immediate action, what do you say to those in the electorate that have that level of concerns that development for the future is important, but the people that are hurting now, essentially?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I continue to say there's no on and off switch. And anyone who tells you that there's an on and off switch in the economy for inflation either doesn't understand the economic environment that we're in, especially with the war that's raging, Russia's aggression against Ukraine. They either don't understand what's happening around the economy, some of these Republican candidates, or they are lying to people saying that there's an on and off switch. But I will tell you, that's why it is, and you're absolutely right. The pharmaceutical benefits won't come for at least another year, because what we've done is we've given the federal government the ability to negotiate with the pharmaceutical companies, and we've capped those out-of-pocket costs. But that won't take effect right away. Same thing with chips. You're absolutely right. That's why it was really important for me, and why I supported our efforts to rein in big oil. And it was really unfortunate that we could not gather the support from Republican colleagues, because I think that could have had a far more immediate impact. We are seeing gas prices continue to drop. And I hope it continues to go in that direction. I think the Social Security increase for seniors, that will go into effect pretty quickly. So they will begin seeing money in their pocket sooner rather than later. But one of the things that Democrats would like to do, and we passed this in the House, and if we have a large enough Senate Democratic majority, we can pass it in the Senate as well. And that is a slew of bills that would help lower costs for families. Those are the pieces of legislation that we passed that would offer paid family and medical leave, so that families could stay home after they have a baby or if they're sick. The child care subsidies, one of the main reasons that many families are struggling, what I've heard from El Paso families and others, is the cost of child care. It's about 30% of their salary. Our subsidies would bring that down to below 17%, so slicing those costs in half. And the expanded child tax credit, which would also put more money in families' pockets. Student loan debt relief as well. And all of those, Andrew, all of those efforts to help cut costs for Americans, all of those were opposed by Republicans in Congress.
Again, if you're just joining us, guest right now is Veronica Escobar, Congresswoman, Democrat, representing the Texas 16th Congressional District, the furthest west Texas district. Of course, if you want to find out more about her, some of the policies and positions that she has taken for this reelection campaign, you can find that at veronicaescobar.com. So, of course, one of the other major ones has been on healthcare, and one of the major planks that you have put forth as well, specifically is supporting and really focusing on universal healthcare for everyone. So, of course, healthcare has been primary issue and a lot of contributing factors to even the previous topic here on the economy over the last few years, and expected to probably be beyond. So when it comes to that, there have been a lot of different phrases that have been put around that idea, whether it be Medicare for all or those kind of things. So what specifically are you proposing, or would you be focusing on in another term of office if, again, continue to be elected?
Andrew, I am for the all of the above approach. Anything and everything that would get El Pasoans access to health care. We live in a state where health care access has actually been blocked by Republicans. You know, we live in a state that's been under Republican control for 30 years. One of the most important pathways to the middle class and to prosperity is access to health care. Most El Pasoans today are one illness away from financial disaster. A quarter of El Pasoans have zero health insurance. Much of the work that UMC does is to help address the health care of the uninsured. So with state Republicans basically blocking federal support and federal money, what has happened is it's placed on the backs of local property taxpayers, and it keeps El Paso economically disadvantaged. So I've supported legislation that has, for example, a bill that I'm really proud of that I worked on with one of my Texas colleagues, basically allows counties a workaround. So if you are a county in one of the last few remaining states that refuses to expand healthcare under the Affordable Care Act, you can contract directly with the federal government and not have to go through your state. Republicans are opposed to this bill. I also am for all sorts of universal health care. So I could name a slew of other bills, but the bottom line, Andrew, anything that provides health care to El Pasoans, especially at the federal level, I support, because of those terrible statistics that I mentioned at the top of this particular discussion.
One of the other major issues that, of course, has dominated a lot of both our airtime and a lot of national discussions as well has, of course, been the immigration question. Before we delve into the current situation, what are some of the things that you're putting forth, again, as your platform on your record for, again, re-election here?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, one of the reasons why I can't be live with you in the studio is because, and I'm having to call in, is because I immediately before calling in was in a local stakeholder working group around migration and, making sure that we're all on the same page and that we have a plan going forward should we see numbers increase at the local level once again. And so, I'm really proud of the work that I'm doing collaboratively with great partners at the city, at the county, at Border Patrol, at ICE, DHS in DC, NGOs, the faith-based community. We're all really coming together as one community to make sure that we are addressing this in a dignified, humanitarian way, and that we're not giving in to sort of the more nativist tendencies that are really just unacceptable. But here's the deal, Andrew. And I wrote an op-ed and it was published in the El Paso Times this Sunday, and I'd like to refer folks to it. But what we have seen happen for the last 3 decades, Congress has not passed any immigration legislation in almost 3 decades.
Right.
In that time, Republicans have told Democrats, we are not going to expand any legal pathways until you quote unquote, secure the border first. And so Democrats have acquiesced and have appropriated funding for walls, have increased funding for the Department of Homeland Security. Many Democrats have supported rapid expulsion policies that began under Trump and that have in fact been expanded under President Biden. And here's the bottom line. Those of us who live in El Paso know that that Republican strategy of addressing migration only at the border, it's a failure. It doesn't work. It hasn't stemmed migration. It hasn't slowed it down. In fact, it has made the border less secure, I would argue, and it has really moved us away from our values as a nation of immigrants. So I'm calling for a multi-pronged approach. I worked with the prior acting Secretary of Homeland Security, and I asked him to help support a way of changing the way we process migrants so that more Border Patrol agents could get back to their mission at the border. He agreed. I got the appropriations for it. We created a civilian position. I'm now trying to expand that so that more agents can get back to their duties at the border. That's one component. We also have to make sure that we are offering legal pathways, which, as I mentioned, Congress hasn't opened up any legal pathways for 30 years. And in fact, the last piece of legislation was Republican legislation that was signed by a Democratic president, President Clinton, and that limited legal pathways. So we shouldn't be surprised that more people are seeking irregular pathways when our country has essentially shut many doors of opportunity to migrants to immigrate legally. So we've got to pass immigration reform. That is on Congress. Every time I hear about one of my Republican colleagues parachuting into the border, taking their selfies at the wall, screaming and throwing tantrums and pointing fingers at the president, whichever president it is, what I've said to my colleagues is we have to legislate. So we've got to do that. And then we've also got to make sure that we are working with hemispheric partners so that we're not just addressing migration at the border, but that we're working with our neighboring countries who are also seeing an increase in refugees arriving at their front door. President Biden is doing that. He's the first president in a long time. Even President Obama didn't do as much as President Biden is to engage Western hemispheric partners. All of this, though, Andrew, is going to take time. This, just like, our prior conversation, there's no on and off switch. Anyone who tells you there is lying or doesn't understand how complex it is. Even under Donald Trump, some of the most inhumanitarian policies like family separation, those awful policies didn't slow down migration. So we've got to do better. We've got to be more strategic. We can't lose our humanity in the process.
Two major points that I want to address here, and again, if you're just joining us, guest right now is Congresswoman Veronica Escobar, Democrat, representing the Texas 16th Congressional District. Again, a lot of her policies and things we are discussing here over on her website, veronicaescobar.com. Find those details about her platform and the related here. So two major things that have been coming up locally, among other things, reimbursements, particularly from the federal level, some discussion about formulas and those kind of things. But essentially, one of the major concerns that have been expressed both by listeners on this program and even by some of the other local elected officials we've had on is essentially that expenditure of local funds and the sustainability of that for what is a federal responsibility has been widely discussed there. So on those reimbursements there specifically about, some millions of dollars in play here, upwards of potentially $10 million, depending on how exactly it's broken down. What exactly is possible there and needs to be done at this point to see that done?
Yeah, great question. So President Biden is the first president to offer to reimburse local communities and NGOs who are assuming the care of migrants as they are released from custody, while they wait to adjudicate their asylum cases. And so I'm very grateful to the administration for doing that. On the county side, the county has received $6 million upfront, and the county has received funding for their migrant processing center through the end of the calendar year. So the county is fully funded, fully taken care of. The city of El Paso has received reimbursements for quarter 1 and quarter 2. We are waiting for the city to submit its request with all of its data for quarter 3. And so we, as soon as the city has submitted quarter 3, my office will then do exactly what we did with quarter 1 and quarter 2 and work really hard to make sure that the city gets every penny back. Additionally, the city, in addition to getting quarter 1 and quarter 2 reimbursed, the city also got an additional $2 million up front. So we're going to continue to work to pursue every funding avenue possible. I will tell you what I have shared with the stakeholders that I met with today and that I met with last week. I am very concerned that if Republicans regain control of Congress, those reimbursements will stop. Republicans attempted to strip the FEMA funding from our latest appropriation, and that would be deeply damaging to communities like El Paso on the border. So we have to prepare for that possibility. It will depend on the outcome of the November election because Congress ultimately controls the purse strings. We have the president's support to have these reimbursements. We have Democratic support for these reimbursements. We just don't have my colleagues on the other side of the aisle. I will ask for their support should they regain control of Congress to ensure that our community is made whole. But I can't guarantee what happens, going that far into the future.
One final question for you as we're almost out of time here is on particularly the idea of border security and immigration reform as you're discussing here, as you mentioned about border controls and security and funding levels particularly for it, and including, of course, your efforts, as you mentioned, towards kind of changing the way that the back end works. What would you say to those that are saying that the border has not been made secure and that the efforts have been insufficient so far into actually doing that securing part of the equation that you mentioned?
Well, I would ask them to define border security for me because when I ask my colleagues, each one of my colleagues has a different answer, each one of my colleagues in Congress. Some of my colleagues say you have 0 people coming in through irregular means. Other folks say we at least, are able to, identify every encounter. I will tell you this, Andrew, and this is what I have said to my colleagues. And, I believe every single one of us in Congress wants this, and everybody in this community wants this. We all want to make sure that we know who is arriving at our border. We want an orderly process, and we want to be safe. So I don't think there's any disagreement among anyone in any of those areas. So where the area of disagreement arrives is how do we do that? I believe we do that by expanding legal avenues. I have been, long before I was in Congress, I worked on, I worked with and collaborated with and even served on boards of migrant organizations. So I have spoken with a lot of folks who have come through El Paso. The vast majority of them, Andrew, would love a legal pathway. They would love an opportunity to plead their case. But because of the way that Congress has failed to act for decades, and because of the last bill that was signed into law almost 30 years ago, which shrank legal pathways, there are no lines for people to get into. There's no turn for them to wait. And so this is why I believe if we have a holistic approach where we allow for more legal pathways, an expansion of visas, we will not only address our labor shortage in this country, but we will create a more orderly process. I think if we allow President Biden to continue his work with the Western Hemisphere, that will bear fruit. It already has. He's also directed historic sums towards human trafficking. There was a huge indictment in Laredo about a month ago, another avenue of his that has now borne fruit. all of this takes time, but I think we all can agree on what we want. But if Republicans continue to insist that we are only going to focus on the border, we're not going to focus on changing laws or this hemispheric work, then we're going to see more of the same. And who pays the price? Communities like ours, the agents, the governments, as well as the vulnerable migrants who are arriving. There is a better way. We just need Republicans to work with us on legislating.
Again, guest right now has been Veronica Escobar, a Democratic Congresswoman representing the Texas 16th Congressional District. Thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us about these policies, about the things that are happening in the community and your position on them here today.
Thanks so much, Andrew. You have a good afternoon.
You too there as well. So we got to end up taking that next break right now. Coming out of this break, we got one more interview we're going to try to squeeze in this hour. So stay tuned. More Talk El Paso after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Hello, everyone. This is Robert Olguin with your KFOX 14 News Update. The West Texas brothers accused of killing a Mexican migrant and injuring another had their bonds reduced today, even as prosecutors argue that they're a danger to the community. Michael and Mark Shepard are accused of shooting at a group of migrants in a shooting that left one man dead and a woman injured on September 27th near Sierra Blanca. Both men appeared virtually for a bond hearing today for the criminal charges that have been filed against them in Hudspeth County. The brothers are facing manslaughter and assault with a deadly weapon charges. Both men had their bonds reduced, but it's not clear if they bonded out of jail. An El Paso man was arrested and charged for his alleged involvement in the January 6th Capitol riot. The man was identified as 47-year-old David Rene Arredondo. Arredondo was charged with assaulting a law enforcement officer, resisting or impeding law enforcement officers, and interfering with law enforcement officers. He was arrested Wednesday in El Paso. This has been your KFOX 14 News Update. I'm Robert Olguin.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
I-10 westbound is slow with bumper-to-bumper traffic from the Hunter Viscount exit to the 54 Patriot. 11-minute delays right now. Slow traffic on the northbound Mesa. Slow traffic on northbound Mesa from downtown Wyoming Avenue to the 10 Desert Boulevard with 5-minute delays. And an accident with police still on the scene from earlier. Eastbound Edgemere at Tierra Este. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, this is Chief Meteorologist Sandra Diaz. 2 words wrap up our Thursday forecast, and that's warm and windy. All thanks to that cold front that we've been expecting all week. But now for your Friday, you can expect to start the day off with some wind. Then the winds decrease, but that still leaves us with a colder day. The weekend, though, does start to shape up nicely as temperatures begin to rebound. Log on to kfoxtv.com for your latest forecast.
This report is sponsored by Lowe's. It's pro time because at Lowe's, it's Provember. Over 30 days to save big. Full of more inventory, more Lowe's MVPs bonus points, and more the deals you deserve. Because it always pays to be a pro at Lowe's. Save all Provember long.
Hey, El Paso, Ivan Ochoa, General Manager of Sunland Park, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat. Right now, our inventory of new and certified pre-owned vehicles is better than ever. So our goal this month is to break our all-time sales record. We'll do whatever it takes to make a deal.
It's Ram Power Days at Sunland Park Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat, and our savings and inventory are huge. Upside down in your current trade? We want it, even if you owe thousands more than it's worth, regardless of make or model. So you can drive home a new or certified pre-owned vehicle for less. For a limited time, get 2.9% APR on the all-new 2022 Ram, or get 0% APR on the all-new 2022 full-size Wagoneer SUV with third row seating. Plus, we have great financing programs for good credit or less than perfect credit. All military personnel and first responders receive an additional discount. Thank you for your service. Sunland Park Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat, where buying a car is fun at I-10 at Sunland Park Drive or online at sunlandparkdodge.com. Estamos en tu esquina, El Paso. El Paso Strong. Includes factory rebate and dealer discount plus T10L. 0 APR for 36 months is $27.78 per thousand finance on select vehicles with approved credit. Offers not combined.
For the local issues and discussion you won't get anywhere else, turn to Talk El Paso. Weekdays at 4 right here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Brought to you in part by the El Paso Community Foundation. Sound off on what matters to you. Monday through Friday, 4 to 6 p.m. And let's talk El Paso.
Finding the right Medicare plan was no easy feat until I found Walgreens Find Rx coverage. Compare plans online, over the phone, or in person. And find plans with low-cost copays. When you need to talk Medicare, Walgreens is here. Start shopping today at walgreens.com/Medicare.
This report is sponsored by Walgreens.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live, streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. A lot of comments coming in there, and we'll be getting to more of those here now. Actually, I have to push that interview to the second part of the show here because we're not going to be able to squeeze it in there. But again, thanks to our guests from the first hour here. Again, Congresswoman Veronica Escobar, Democrat representing the Texas 16th Congressional District. Just as a side note here, if you think that asking someone what are the policies they're running on constitutes an endorsement of their campaign, man, do I need you to understand what actual propaganda is. Because if you think that asking someone like, what do you think, means I agree with you, if you just want to scream at someone, you don't need me around here for that, is all I'm saying here. So that's part of what we do here, is asking candidates what they think so that you all can make your discussion. If you just want to yell at them, I mean, just go stand outside their house. Don't actually go stand outside their house and like do anything bad because, well, if you want to get arrested, that's on you. But in any case, point is that, yeah, we got to know what these people are actually putting forth to then know how to vote here. So if you already made up your mind, yeah, again, you don't really need me here for this, but if you want to be informed about it, hey, welcome to the program here. Anyway, getting to more of the calls. We'll go ahead and open up those phone calls here right now as we, again, slight change of plan just because of time-wise here. If you want to get on the line, that number to call is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Taking at least a few through the end of the hour, getting into that other interview announced with John Lira, Democratic nominee. Keep using the wrong term, nominee for the Texas 23rd Congressional District. We'll do that second hour of the program here. But right now on the line, we do have Andrew on the west side with us right now. Andrew, thanks for joining us.
Yes, Ms. Escobar, a really intelligent person. But what I find difficult to understand, border security, basically, definition, keeping people out that shouldn't be coming in. And one of the things that has created this problem was Biden's invitation to the entire world to come into the United States. I saw the video. Let them come in.
I think that part of that definition is complex here. And of course, there was the rebuttal that wasn't exactly full-throated, I guess, as I would call it, from, well, the vice president, Kamala Harris, of the don't come, even though that was, I mean, I guess you could take the tone as impassioned, but I took it as a little bit, maybe not, like, maybe be loud about it is all I'm saying.
Well, a day late and a dollar short. But
Well,
anyway,
that too.
yes, she did mention the several bills that were passed, but I don't recall any money for the hiring of more Border Patrol agents. I did see funding for 85,000 new IRS agents.
Separate than what I think she was talking about here, but yes, that has of course gone through. The program she was talking a little bit more specifically about, if I'm not mistaken, was around not exactly Border Patrol agents, because again, the back end of that hiring process, I've had reason to not go through the process myself, but be a part of the process actually, and part of some of the background checks, those kind of things. And it's long, it's intensive. I don't know if it anymore includes like polygraph, but like it's that kind of an intense sort of situation. So that's kind of a you can't just, not to borrow a phrase here, but you can't just say, okay, let's have 20,000 more Border Patrol agents. That's a years long process. So the one that she was mentioning there, that I guess now that you mentioned, a little unclear, but as passed or not, was the idea of making it so there'd be more civilian level employees doing more of the non-law enforcement related duties, processing those kind of things. So that's more what she was talking about. But yeah, I mean, you make an interesting juxtaposition there.
Yes, I understand what you're saying, but we wouldn't need these extra civilian employees if Biden's open door immigration policy was not in effect. That's the point that I'm trying to make. In other words, and concerning the economy, I find it insulting that she says they're either lying to you concerning the economy or the economic process, or they have no idea. In other words, they're ignorant. Well, there are those of us that have the same amount of education she has, or even more. But there would be no need for this resolving this problem if Biden had not turned off that spigot, or if he had not closed that switch. Turning off the spigot on domestic oil production, that's partly to blame on this. In other words, don't fix the barn doors after the horses have gone.
Yeah, I mean, I referring there to like the Keystone XL, which I mean, sure would not have been. I mean, arguably, maybe by this point it would have started delivering. But as we've talked about, trajectories of making it so that you're on the path for it. And I mean, hindsight being 2020, yeah, I'm wondering if there's some reevaluation going on even within the White House on that point here of given the. Well, I mean, Russia, among other things, like, sure, that's not so much affecting our demand for it, but the increasing demand elsewhere is making it that, yeah, particularly if we're needing to prop up, like, say, parts of Europe coming out of this, and this, particularly this winter, this is going to be a very difficult one in a lot of ways. And so wondering if considerations of a political nature, taking those over strategic concerns may be, well, I'm hoping that doesn't come back to bite us in the behind, but only time will tell.
Well, we were shipping out, we were exporting a lot of oil, natural gas, and now that we've cut that, yeah, Europe is having to depend on Comrade Putin out there, and there's the problem in the Ukraine war. Well, now Putin is strangling the Ukraine and Europe. So anyway, Andrew, like I said, complex issues, but
oh, absolutely.
I know there are those of us out there that have studied politics, economics. We're not as stupid as these politicians think we are, or we're not stupid like these politicians think we are. We're not. Anyway, I turn the mic back over to you, and thank you very much.
Yeah, sure thing. Thanks for the point in the call. You have a good one there.
Take care.
Appreciate it. Let's squeeze in one more before we hit that next break and get to the top of the hour here. We'll be taking calls again through about the first segment of next hour and then back to the next interview, cramming them in this season. It's elections, y'all. Forewarned, forearmed. We do have Eric, I believe, on the west side here with us right now. Eric, thanks for joining us.
Okay. Yeah, I guess we'll just address what the last caller was saying. You know, it's always the callers that are so adamantly like, oh, we're not ignorant, we're not stupid. And then they go on to say some radically incorrect things that contradict the consensus among economists or in experts. Like, if you don't want to be viewed that way, then do your due diligence, do your fact checking, do your research. But the inflation we're seeing with the gas, that's the product of COVID that shut down gas production all across the world, which produced a massive lack of supplies. Biden's policies had next to nothing to do with them. So right-wing people, they believe these fictions about gas and inflation just because Fox News and conservative talk radio repeat every day. That's Biden's policies and Democrat policies aren't what's driving inflation. It's greed and COVID disruptions of the supply chains.
I mean, I understand that there's the whole point about, rising corporate profits, even though there is also the argument to be made about it that as inflation rises, therefore they are having to charge more. I mean, that whether it's rising, whether or not it's actually within proportion is, I think, the real question that needs to be asked that hasn't been focused on as much here. But to say, again, I think that's not quite the argument you realize you're making there when it comes down to the idea that, well, Biden's policies have nothing to do with it. It kind of implies a fecklessness at that point, that there's nothing that they could do. Therefore, there's just kind of a drift on the winds of these issues here, and I'm not sure that's a good one either.
No, that's a straw man. That's not what I was arguing.
Okay, I mean, if we're going to get back into this idea of debating what are the logical fallacies here,
like you gave the wrong definition of a straw man. A straw man is just saying, oh, this person's actually saying something else. Let me attack that, as opposed to what they actually said. That's what a straw man, and that's what you've done with me on every single call I've called in, to be honest.
So then let me suggest something to you here briefly. Why don't you respond to then what I'm saying here about the actual argument, as opposed to saying, no, that's not allowed here. So to the idea of there being, again, a fecklessness within this administration when it comes to economic policy, I mean, do you not see why that might be an issue?
No, the issue is ignoring the main driving forces and falsely attributing it to Biden, which is what conservative talk radio and Republicans have been doing. COVID has produced this inflation. That's the main driver of it. And then now Biden's being blamed for it.
Okay, I mean, if you're entitled to your opinion on that point here, but I'm actually going to listen to me and respond to what we're talking about here. The point is that, among other things, this administration has claimed one of the strongest economic recoveries, one of the strongest economies, among other things. And so there are a lot of varying indicators. It's not all bad, as much as people might want to believe that. I mean, there are strong employment numbers, even if the workforce is a little behind. There are strong spending numbers, even if inflation is looking at it here. So I guess the point that I was trying to address there is, what actually then impact has this administration's policies have? And if the contention is that they haven't had much of any in a lot of ways here, that's a problem in a different way. So if we can't, synthesize and synergize these different ideas here, well, good luck with the rest of the discussion there. In any case, we got to take that next break now. Coming out of this break, we're going to go ahead and hit the top of the hour right now and take a few more calls, get into that next interview. Again, more congressional, trying to at least touch on nearly all of them by the end of this week here. So stay tuned for more Talk El Paso after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
A big crash in the lower valley. Two of them, actually. One of them on I-10 eastbound at the Loop 375. It's blocking 3 right lanes. Expect delays. In the lower valley, eastbound on Border Highway at Zaragoza, an earlier crash there is still blocking the exit ramp. I-10 westbound is slow. Bumper to bumper. 18-minute delays from the Hunter Viscount exit to the 54 Patriot. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Lowe's.
Political ad paid for by Texans for Greg Abbott.
Beto O'Rourke stands with radical groups who want to defund the police. Governor Abbott stands with law enforcement so they can keep Texas families safe. Greg Abbott, governor.
Hello?
Mike, this is Norma Jean at Sergio Lewis Body Shop near the airport. Have you seen Sergio?
I'm expecting him in a few minutes to cut a new commercial.
I'm really worried about him, Mike. He really believes he's a poet. It's gone to his head.
There's plenty of room up there. Anyways, his poetry isn't that bad.
Will you please have him call the shop?
Sure, Norma.
That's Norma Jean, Mike. Gotta go.
Yee, she's feisty. Hey, Sergio, there you are.
Hey, Mike, I have this great new poem. Check this out, man. Sometimes even our darkest moments are enlightening. Hey, what's so funny, man?
Nothing, Sergio, really. By the way, Norma Jean called.
Really? What did she want?
Oh, she was just telling me what a big fan she is of your poetry, Sergio. Sergio Lewis Body Shop at 3800 Admiral near the airport, where it's the customer's choice, not the insurance company's, and there's a lifetime warranty on all collision repair. 593-0191.
Politicians have led us down the wrong path. Record inflation and cost of living. Unsafe border communities, a war on oil and gas jobs. Enough is enough. Catherine Parker will uphold our Texas values. A successful businesswoman and rancher, Catherine Parker will lower inflation and our cost of living. Catherine Parker will work to permanently lower your property taxes. Catherine Parker will stand up to the radicals who threaten our values and put our families in harm's way. Catherine Parker will secure our border communities and fully fund border security. Catherine Parker will stand with law enforcement and against those who want to defund our police, because our communities deserve to be safe. And Catherine Parker will defend the oil and gas jobs that power our communities. Truth, freedom, prosperity. Vote Catherine Parker for District 74 on November 8th. Political ad paid for by Catherine Parker Campaign.
Catch the show in the sky and help support the fight against cancer with the 4th annual Flight to Fight Cancer Research Awareness Fly-In on October 29th, hosted by Francis Aviation and the War Eagles Air Museum, and powered by News Radio 690 KTSM and Sunny 99.9. Details on Facebook and Instagram at Cancer Flight.
Gabriel Vasquez is too extreme for New Mexico. This is Matt Schlapp, chairman of CPAC Action PAC. By supporting 87,000 new IRS agents, trillions in new government spending, and stimulus checks for criminals and illegals, Democrats put loyalty to Biden, Pelosi, and Sanders above the needs of your family. Democrats are wrong on the border. They repeatedly oppose closing the border, leading to more human trafficking, drug smuggling, and violent crime. Democrats are also extremists on abortion, supporting unregulated abortion, even in the last trimester, funded by taxpayers. Let's send Washington, D.C. socialists a message. Gabriel Vasquez is wrong for New Mexico.
Paid for by CPAC Action Pack. Not affiliated with any candidate or candidate committee. www.cpacactionpack.com.
This fall, find everything you love listening to on Audible. From memoirs and true crime to celebrities and sci-fi, Audible is the home of storytelling, audiobooks, podcasts, and originals. Sign up for a free 30-day trial at audible.com.
News on the hour and a half. Traffic and weather all day. News Radio 690 is KTSM AM El Paso, an iHeart radio station.
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook. President Biden says the new Micron Technology computer chip fabrication plant is one of the most significant investments the country has ever seen.
They're going to build factories the size of 40 football fields, big enough to fit the Carrier Dome 4 times inside it and still have space left over.
Speaking in Syracuse, Biden said Micron is doing its part to make sure the future is made in this country. Stocks are closing mixed. After the release of the latest GDP report, it showed the economy increased at a rate of 2.6%, better than expectations. This gave some investors hope that the Federal Reserve will ease up on interest rate hikes. Former President Trump is pushing back on the New York Attorney General's move to select an independent watchdog group to review his organization's financial statements. CNBC reported Letitia James requested an independent group to monitor documents the Trump organization submits to third-party firms. Shares of Twitter will be suspended on the New York Stock Exchange tomorrow as Elon Musk prepares to complete his takeover. Gabrielle Fahmy says this week could finally mark the end of a long saga over the company's acquisition.
Musk backed out of the Twitter deal in the summer, and the social media company sued him to force it through. Then, in a surprise twist, Musk went back to his original agreement after sensing pre-trial hearings were not going well for him. He told prospective investors in his purchase he was planning to lay off nearly 75% of Twitter's workforce. The stock has made an impressive climb since hitting a low this summer and is now trading at its highest level this year.
The Rust movie shooting police report is being handed over to the Santa Fe District Attorney in New Mexico. Deadline reports there are no plans to make the report public at this time. You're listening to the latest from NBC News Radio. A judge in South Carolina is forcing a former Trump chief of staff to comply with a subpoena in Georgia.
Mark Meadows has been trying to get out of complying with the request for him to testify about potential criminal activity in the 2020 presidential election in neighboring Georgia. Meadows is a South Carolina resident, which is why a Pickens County judge had to get involved. Meadows was listening to a call former President Trump made to Georgia's Secretary of State following the election. That's where Trump urged him to find votes so he could prevail in Georgia. I'm Scott Kimbler.
A convicted New Jersey serial killer now faces a 4th murder charge. Khalil Wheeler Weaver is already serving a life sentence for the brutal strangulation murders of 3 women. He killed all of his victims after luring them into meeting on dating apps and was sentenced to 160 years in prison for the crimes. Wheeler Weaver has now pleaded not guilty to a 4th murder, that of a 15-year-old girl who died in 2016. New York City Transit is marking the 118th birthday of the subway system. Lisa G. has more.
New York City Transit President Richard Davey acknowledged the occasion by greeting commuters and employees at stations in 3 boroughs. He admitted there are concerns about safety on the subways, and they're working to address it. Davey says the majority of the 3.8 million people who rode the system had no incidents at all, but admits more has to be done to help people with mental health issues who are in the subways.
2 Ohio men appeared in court to answer charges that they cheated to win a $30,000 fishing tournament. Jake Runyon and Chase Kaminsky were originally declared winners last month of the Cleveland Championship on Lake Erie. The pair were soon disqualified when organizers and opponents showed video proof their catch had lead weights stuffed inside. Brian Shook, NBC News Radio.
Now your chance to win $1,000. Just enter this nationwide keyword on our website. Money. That's money. Enter it now.
This report is paid for by the Texans for Greg Abbott.
Political ad paid for by Texans for Greg Abbott.
Beto O'Rourke stands with radical groups who want to defund the police. Governor Abbott stands with law enforcement so they can keep Texas families safe. Greg Abbott, Governor.
The El Paso Community Foundation supports the causes you feel passionate about here in the borderland, whether it's education, social services, arts and culture, the environment, health, or economic development, the El Paso Community Foundation has been promoting philanthropy and progress in our hometown region for more than 45 years. Make your mark with us. Start a fund today. For good, for El Paso, forever. Learn more at epcf.org. That's epcf.org.
Politicians have led us down the wrong path. Record inflation and cost of living, unsafe border communities, a war on oil and gas jobs. Enough is enough. Catherine Parker will uphold our Texas values. A successful businesswoman and rancher, Catherine Parker will lower inflation and our cost of living. Catherine Parker will work to permanently lower your property taxes. Catherine Parker will stand up to the radicals who threaten our values and put our families in harm's way. Catherine Parker will secure our border communities and fully fund border security. Catherine Parker will stand with law enforcement and against those who want to defund our police, because our communities deserve to be safe. And Catherine Parker will defend the oil and gas jobs that power our communities. Truth, freedom, prosperity. Vote Catherine Parker for District 74 on November 8th. Political ad paid for by Catherine Parker Campaign.
A construction site is a noisy place where things can be misinterpreted. We need to redo the drywall. It can sound a lot like
Rewire the hull? They're firing, Paul. Wait, what did I do?
or even
Install a waterfall. Whose dumb idea was this?
be on the same page at every stage with Autodesk. From the designers to the field crew to the owner of the finished building, Autodesk Construction Cloud gives everyone clarity. Now, how about that drywall?
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live, streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. Again, mention those because leave your comments over there, such as RJ asking if I've tried Xanax, Tylenol, perhaps something in the Valium family, encouraging me to see my doctor for that there. Let's just say I should probably buy stock in whoever makes the generic version of ibuprofen I take very often these days, more for like remnants of old injuries than anything else. But I'll just say, not having to worry about pain and the headaches that come with it helps in its own way, but also it's not like this is being done to me. A phrase we use in my family is I called this airstrike on myself, but I'm about it, and we'll keep talking about it. Again, all the issues going on with the elections here. So again, I guess from the previous hour, El Paso Congresswoman, Democrat Representative Veronica Escobar for the Texas 16 Congressional District. And coming up this hour, we're going to be talking with the Democratic nominee challenger for the Texas 23rd Congressional District, hearing some of his parts. That district, of course, including an increasing amount of El Paso County, broadly the unincorporated or rural parts of the eastern part of El Paso County. Take a look for the map for yourself if you got access online. It should be educational in its own right. It's the entire eastern border of El Paso County, so I will say that much. So that's coming up here. But in the meantime, we're getting just more of those comments and calls here. A lot of people tuning in, chiming in, including some of those adding their 2 cents over on the social media. I want to mention a few of those because we do appreciate the algorithmic things that this helps us with, including, of course, we do have Flaco Jimenez, Amber Banda, Matt Olson, Angel Rueda, Alex Campos, Robbie Flores, Monica Cervantes, Sergio Faz, James Holmes, Richard Lewis, Glenn Stewart, and Ida Beza Gardner. Again, if you appreciate what we do here, I'm not saying you have to like the topics we get into, but if you appreciate the opportunity to both hear them, hear the discussion, and then add your 2 cents, drop that like, drop that react, share, tell a friend, etc. So more of those comments coming in. Here's Mondo Moncanda also commenting over there. Matt Olson with the clown faces, I'm thinking. The graphics sometimes show up weirdly if that's what you intended here. And Marky Mandingo with some of the other comments coming in there saying COVID didn't keep $60 per hour jobs away, and calling for ignorance and responses to that here. So if you want to make more of those points here, as also Ion Grim, if I didn't say that already, chiming in over there on the social media. But one other comment that came in between the hours here, just wanted to make the comment on air. Tom saying that if the U.S. is producing more oil than ever, then why is this administration using parts of the strategic oil reserve as part of it? So I think that's just a common misconception that comes up a lot, because the phrase that happened during the previous administration was net energy exporter. And I think a lot of people take that to mean that we were making a lot of our own gas. And even at that point, we were still importing gasoline and those kind of things, because there are circumstances where essentially U.S. refineries will be used to, well, just do the processing. So there'll be like a tanker that shows up, offloads its crude, it gets processed and gets put right back on the tanker, kind of thing. It's a lot more complex than that, but that's essentially the sense that sometimes happens. But what the U.S. is definitely good at, and as a definitely that's where the whole net exporter comes from, is when it comes to the natural gas, because, well, fracking, hydraulic fracturing is, well, it's pretty much one of the major byproducts or major production parts of it. Even if sometimes it's byproducts. Listen, energy is complicated. No one ever said that. And just one of the things I want to mention here is how in Germany, they're actually thinking about keeping a few of their nuclear power plants that were supposed to be decommissioned online for this winter. So all I'm saying is that take a look at some news that's coming out of Europe recently about protests, and not quite riots, but I'm not going to say that it couldn't happen. I mean, seriously, it is it is going to be an interesting winter coming from there. If you're calling it disinformation, tell me where I'm wrong, because I'd love to hear from it in a not a everyone that believes this way is evil kind of way. That's just not a productive discussion point for me. Ion Grimm saying voting location has 2,500 voters this week. People want change. Again, still technically on a slower pace, but honestly, I think that this election is going to hit in a way that is unexpected. There was a lot of prognostication I was looking at that this one is just not going to happen, not going to go forward here, but and that people weren't going to care. And that just never struck right for me. But let's go back to those phone lines now. We do have Stephen on the east side here with us right now. Stephen, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Andrew, how you doing?
Doing all right there. What's on your mind?
Good. I just want to address a couple things that the previous caller and Veronica Escobar said. One of the things when it comes to immigration that is going to control whether people surge into the country or not is the expectations that they have. So it's no secret that the Democrats opposed Donald Trump in his securing of the border, whether it's the border wall, whether it was drones, whether it was more security, technology. They opposed all of those things when he tried to implement them, to the point that the way he actually ended up supporting securing the border was to strong arm essentially Mexico and have Mexico secure the border for us, and doing the Remain in Mexico policy. And the reason why that helps stopping the surge is because people didn't any longer have the expectation that if they just cross over, then they get to stay and wait for a court date and stay in the United States. And so it's hard for the human traffickers to convince migrants to come up and then pay money to the traffickers if they don't have the expectation that they're going to be able to get in and stay in the meantime and wait for the court date and potentially not show up for their court date. So that's why we've had 5 million crossings that we know of ever since Biden took office, because a big signal from the Democrats was that they were going to reverse every policy that Donald Trump put in place, and they were going to be able to, if they got in, stay for years and potentially forever. So that's the expectation that they have, and that's why you get the big surge. The other thing when it comes to expectations with energy policy is when the Democrats run on the new Green Deal or the Green New Deal, and Biden said he was going to shut down fossil fuels. In his first week in office, he signed in something that tightened the regulations, the XL pipeline. So those prices are based on future expectations of how much supply is going to be available. And of course, the prices started surging because they knew that the Democrats were going to put in place those policies.
So yeah, I mean some of the stated goals. I mean, whether or not you think that it's really had that much of an impact, just look at some of the discussions that have gone on. Another one that comes to mind for me is the whole kerfuffle over the replacement of the U.S. Postal Service fleet. There was essentially, the ultra long life vehicles that are the ones that the iconic, boxy kind of snouted ones that you see going around right now. Of course, fossil fuel based. And the question of how to replace those, or whether just, kind of upgrade them, keep them going on, that has become its own sticking point that I've talked about previously. But that's just kind of emblematic of not necessarily the administration, but of a lot of the attitude that can be seen federal level when it comes to these issues and what can or should or might likely be done with them. So I'm not saying that it wasn't a policy point. I mean, the idea of particularly the lightning rod of the Keystone XL pipeline and those things was very much apparent both in the election and the immediate aftermath, including, some of the leases being changed and canceled and things like that. So, I mean, whether or not you believe it actually changed production, it definitely sent a statement about what can and would be happening. And again, this administration pretty much had if things had worked out the way they wanted to, would have wanted to continue on probably with that kind of methodology. But of course, when you start, again, putting ideology over reality and expecting the latter to conform to the former, it usually doesn't work out. And the fact of the matter is, we're now in a situation where the production of energy, period, particularly mobile energies, things that can be exported, because sure, if we had, a nuclear power plant per state, I know that's ridiculous to say, but just for example, sure, we could have most of the energy needs met here, but it would be difficult to get that over to other international partners, because actually having mobility of energy without having to have infrastructure is the difficult part. So fossil fuels are definitely going to be a sticking point, at least for the next few years, even if we went full tilt, full ram, full, all the way into the idea of electrical renewals, nuclear. It's still going to take a while. So I think this is where rubber hits the road, reality hits the fan, so to speak, about what was actually needed to be able to continue functioning the way we need to and not have these massive drop-offs that will result in not just people losing their livelihoods, but their lives as well. Particularly, Europe, that's a serious concern for this winter.
Well, it was clear that we were coming out of the pandemic, and that was when demand for all of these things was obviously going to go up. This is the worst time ever to try to clamp down on it and send that message, because you have to think of yourself like an investor. If I'm an investor and I'm going to invest my money in some kind of project, and you're going to put it into something that's going to produce, say, natural gas or oil or something like that, then you're not going to want to do it if the incoming administration is telling you, we're going to restrict this, we're going to tax this, we're going to regulate this eventually out of existence. So as an investor, you're not want to go into it. And not only that, with the ESG that's going across the globe, the banks refuse to finance those projects. They refuse to insure those projects. That's part of the ESG plan. And all of that ties into inflation, because energy policy is the kind of thing that controls every other industry, because all industries need energy. And if you raise the prices on energy, then you're raising the prices on everything. But not only that, raising the levels of money supply in society has always been something that happens before inflation. So anytime you have the government printing and spending money, which is absolutely what our government did, pushed mostly by the Democrats, but some of the Republicans were complicit as well, the spineless ones. They printed all this money, and that, no doubt, every single time in history is what happens preceding large levels of inflation. And any expert and an economist who knows anything knows that. And the larger supply of money chasing fewer goods, we had fewer goods and services because of shutdowns, and the long shutdowns, the lockdowns, definitely happened more in the Democrat-run states. So all of that is very clear. So Eric McNabb, he has his echo chamber. He goes to the Washington Post. He searches online for the things that confirm his preconceived biases. That's not research.
Fair enough here. Well, thanks for the point in the call. Do appreciate it.
Thanks.
Try to get at least one more call before we hit that next interview. We do have Barbara on the west side here with us right now. Barbara, thanks for joining us.
Hi, Andrew. Thank you for taking my call.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the two interviews that you had, one with Samaniego and one with Escobar, just told us why we cannot vote for either of these people. Samaniego made the statement that it's been overwhelming, and even though with all his experience and all his knowledge, it's been difficult. So he's saying he's telling us a fresh new set of eyes on this problem won't change anything. So status quo is okay, El Paso. It's not. We need to vote for Guadalupe Jened. She's got her head on her shoulders. She has brand new eyes on this problem. He sees it like a shuttleboard game, I guess. You're just going back and forth and back and forth. We ship them out. They come in. We ship them out. We put them in that welcome center. We take them out and ship them out. I mean, we need to vote him out. And then regarding the interview with Escobar just now, it's amazing. She knows it all. We are, the peons. We don't know anything. But she neglected to state that when Biden walked in, the first thing he did was eviscerate every good thing President Trump did. I mean, then she goes into inflation. She doesn't talk anything about why it's that way. As a matter of fact, we know that the president has tapped into the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. And I learned today, and I was not aware of this, I don't know how many callers know, that there's actually a reserve of heating oil on the East Coast, and that there are only 25 days left of heating oil in the East Coast. So they're going to tap into that reserve too. That's pretty dangerous. They're already asking the people on the East Coast to, I guess, conserve on their heating. How can you do that in the East Coast? But that's what they've told them to do. And regarding our economy, I mean, take a look at your 401k. Whoever looked at their 401k and trembled under Trump? I mean, these policies are killing everybody. And then she's talking about immigration. How can she explain, and then Eric too, how can she explain that there isn't a process? She's talked to a lot of these people, and they say if there was a legal process, they would follow it. She is failing the community because she needs to tell them there is a process. There's a legal process, and this is what it is. She should be standing out there with a flyer, and she should attend, and she needs to explain if there isn't a legal process, how is it that every year approximately 1 million people enter our country legally? She should go to those naturalization ceremonies that I go to. They came in legally. There was a process for them. How is it there's not a process for the Venezuelans or the Hondurans or, other people that want to come in here illegally? There's definitely a process there. And then she talks about you can't have an on and off switch on our economy. Well, I tell you what, Biden found that off switch because within a matter of months, our economy went down. I mean, our paychecks, he says he's on TV the other day, he's never given a tax increase to anybody working. Well, I would say that inflation that costs us 8.5 is a big tax on our payroll. So don't tell us that he hasn't done anything and all they're doing is the best thing they can do for the United States of America, which is not true. So if El Paso opens their eyes, she's failing us at the border. She's not telling these illegal immigrants the truth about the legal process. She's just telling us, the dummies, that we need to believe her. Don't believe your lying eyes at the border. So we need to vote for Irene Almendares Jackson and replace Escobar, bring her home, or maybe she could move somewhere else. I don't know. She doesn't like living on the border because we're too dumb to understand immigration. Maybe she'll consider moving somewhere else. But those are my comments. Oh, and for Eric, he says that it's only Republicans that listen to Fox and we get all our bad news. How can he explain the Dems that are coming over and voting for Republicans? How can he explain all the independents that are leaning Republican and voting for Republicans? And how about the Hispanics? I've met thousands of them. And you hear them on TV saying why they're voting Republican. And the blacks do. Can somebody give me a logical explanation why all this movement is coming to the Republicans and why there are legal pathways to citizenship, but we're to believe that there isn't a legal pathway to citizenship? If somebody can make a logical defense of what we just heard from Escobar and what we heard from Samaniego yesterday, please let me know. But I've already cast my vote against both of them, so I hope everybody else does, and against the propositions A, B, and C. Thank you, Andrew. And this wasn't my topic for today.
I know.
But you can't help but respond.
It happens that way sometimes where we got to deal with the things of the day here. So thank you for the point in the call. I do appreciate it.
Thank you, Andrew.
You have a good one there. I guess, particularly in the economy, that whole on-off switch question here, I guess the way I see it is that there's definitely an off switch. I mean, it's always, as is anything in life, it's easier. It's super easy to tear something down versus build it up. So you can definitely turn something off, but an on switch, if there's something easy to flip back up, because think about what goes into that. It takes, capability, supply, willingness, consumer confidence, none of which are easy things to get back once they're gone. It takes a long time. So I agree that I'd argue that there's probably an off switch or an off button, but finding that on switch, if anyone could find a quick way to do that, you'd probably win a Nobel Prize or two. Anyway, got to take that next break. Coming out of this break, our second interview for today, as we are definitely in the midst of election season. Going to be talking with John Lira, Democratic nominee for the Texas 23rd Congressional District. That district stretching all the way from San Antonio, the outskirts, to El Paso as well, eastern border and beyond. So stay tuned. More Talk El Paso after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM. If you're on the line, go ahead and stay there. We'll get to your calls after this next segment. Otherwise, more comments online. Back after this break with more. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
I-10 eastbound before Loop 375 in the Lower Valley. A crash there is blocking 3 right lanes. There's a backup to Zaragoza and growing. Also in the Lower Valley on Border Highway eastbound at Zaragoza, an earlier accident with injuries is still blocking the exit ramp. I-10 westbound slow, 14-minute delays, Hunter Viscount to the 54 Patriot. Eastbound I-10 slow from Trans Mountain to the 54 Patriot with 7-minute delays. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
As you crunch the numbers trying to get the most out of your dollar, we'll throw in a $1,000 inflation bonus. Much better. Listen every hour from 9 a.m. through 5 p.m. weekdays for your chance to win $1,000.
Listen to win $1,000 every hour, weekdays from 9 a.m. through 5 p.m. It's the 1,000 inflation bonus on News Talk 690 a.m.
This report is paid for by the Texans for Greg Abbott.
Political ad paid for by Texans for Greg Abbott.
Beto O'Rourke stands with radical groups who want to defund the police. Governor Abbott stands with law enforcement so they can keep Texas families safe. Greg Abbott, Governor.
Hello?
Mike, this is Norma Jean at Sergio Lewis Body Shop near the airport. Have you seen Sergio?
I'm expecting him in a few minutes to cut a new commercial.
I'm really worried about him, Mike. He really believes he's a poet. It's gone to his head.
There's plenty of room up there. Anyways, his poetry isn't that bad.
Will you please have him call the shop?
Sure, Norma.
That's Norma Jean, Mike. Gotta go.
Yee, she's feisty. Hey, Sergio, there you are.
Hey, Mike, I have this great new poem. Check this out, man. Sometimes even our darkest moments are enlightening. Hey, what's so funny, man?
Nothing, Sergio, really. By the way, Norma Jean called.
Really? What did she want?
Oh, she was just telling me what a big fan she is of your poetry, Sergio. Sergio Lewis Body Shop at 3800 Admiral near the airport, where it's the customer's choice, not the insurance companies, and there's a lifetime warranty on all collision repair. 593-0191.
Texting enrolls you into recurring automated text messages. Consent not required to purchase. Message and data rates may apply.
Hey, Dan, how you doing? Haven't seen you around the gym for a while.
Yeah, I've really fallen off. Since I turned 40, I just don't get the results I used to get.
Could be lower testosterone.
Lower T.
Yeah, I went through it a while back. Once you hit 40, your body has less free testosterone. I got Nugenix Total T, and it's made a huge difference for me.
I've seen that ad on TV. Is it for real?
Oh, yeah. The patented key ingredient is something called Testofen, which helps boost free and total testosterone levels to help you trim up and stay lean.
And it's made a difference for you?
Man, I feel like I'm in my 20s again, at work, in the gym, and in the bedroom.
Are they still giving out complimentary bottles for people to try it for themselves?
Yeah, you just need to send them a text.
Text HUNK to 42424 right now for your complimentary bottle of Nugenix Total T, the #1 selling testosterone booster at GNC. Plus, text now and we'll include a bottle of Nugenix Thermo, our most powerful fat incinerator ever, to help you get back into shape fast. Absolutely free. Text HUNK to 42424. That's HUNK to 42424.
Hey, Mario Courtney Lopez here. We know how important it is to be confident in all of life's close-up moments.
And bad breath can rob you of your confidence.
Yeah, it can. Whenever I'm rubbing elbows with celebrities or friends or just chilling at home, I got to make sure I have the confidence that comes with Smart Mouth mouthwash.
Smart Mouth is clinically proven to eliminate and prevent bad breath for 24 hours with just 2 rinses a day.
Get to your favorite retailer right now for that kind of better together confidence.
Find Smart Mouth at your favorite retailer or at smartmouth.com/radio.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. cramming it in a lot today. Definitely using that term cram in the very literal sense here, as we're kind of manipulating our logs a little bit, squeezing in a little bit more than we usually would get in order to make it so we can get to all the interviews. Again, coming up right now, interview with John Lira, Democratic nominee for the Texas 23rd Congressional District. For those unfamiliar, some of those redistricting things mean that essentially if you're along I-10 and outside of the city limits, there's a decent chance that you might be in that district, particularly in the kind of like southeast part of El Paso County. Again, look up the Texas 23rd, and if you've got any questions, an easy way to do it would be to go to epcountyvotes.com to know who you will have on your ballot. But so I wanted to talk about those and some of the other races. So this will be another one kind of not exactly closing out, but another one of the amount of the congressional races we have in our area. So here is that interview. Enjoy. Joining me now, we have John Lira, Democrat nominee for the Texas 23rd Congressional District. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Andrew, it's great to be here with you and great to be here with the folks of 690 KTSM.
Absolutely happy to have you on to talk about these issues because, of course, those unfamiliar, the Texas 23rd Congressional District is kind of a beast of one. It extends all the way from the lower valley of El Paso to the outskirts of San Antonio and is only increasingly the entire eastern border of El Paso County after the most recent redistricting. So there's more people than are going to be covered by this than there have ever previously been. So those unfamiliar with yourself and with this race, introduce yourself briefly and give a little bit about your background and some of your major policy positions you're running on for this race.
For sure. Happy to do so. Again, my name is John Lira, and I am the Democratic nominee for U.S. Congress in Texas 23. I'm originally born and raised in San Antonio, Texas, on the northeast side, on the southeast side that covers part of our district. But actually, my wife is from El Paso. So between the both of us, we have the district, this big district bookended there. But, the smartest decision I ever made in my life was at the age of 17, I raised my hand to enlist in the Marine Corps. And not only did that plant the seed of service, it's kind of the starting point as to what brought me here as a nominee for U.S. Congress. I served for ultimately 11 and a half years on active duty and the reserves, including 2 combat tours to Iraq. The Marines gave me a job as an intelligence analyst, and I wanted to use my GI Bill to build on that and to continue serving my country because I knew that it had value. The job was to, inform decision makers so they can make the best decisions possible. So I went to San Antonio College, became a student of political science, went to the University of Texas at San Antonio. Ultimately, this busboy who started off working on the Riverwalk, made it to Carnegie Mellon University for my master's in public policy. So from there, went to Washington. I did about 5 years, a tour of duty, I call it, in the front lines of public policy. Worked at headquarters for AmeriCorps, helping veterans and military families transition. Then went to the U.S. Small Business Administration and was empowering veterans to become small business owners and entrepreneurs. And then I worked on a national commission that was created by John McCain on service and how we can create an ethos of service in America's youth and more pathways for them to serve in the military and in national service and in public service. So that kind of explains how I got here. The reason why I'm running for U.S. Congress, and you got it right, the biggest, baddest congressional district we have in Texas, and certainly one of the biggest and baddest in the country, is because it is not easy. It is hard. We have this district faces some of the biggest challenges we have here in Texas, and not only for Texas, but this district has, national implications, international implications on some of the stuff we have here. So we need a representative who's going to get at the forefront, fight at the forefront of these issues and not take a back seat to anybody. So again, if the guy in there now was doing his job, I wouldn't be in this race, but he came in and he does not represent our values and has let us down in a lot of ways in his basic elements of bringing resources back to this district. So I'm in here to continue serving. I'm in here because the district is important and there's a lot to fight for nowadays.
So getting to some of your policy positions there, and people can see them for themselves to visit your campaign website, liraforcongress.com. That's LIRAFOR Congress.com. People want to see that here. Jobs and energy is one of your top ones that you've got there, because the Texas 23rd Congressional District embodies that in a few different ways. Of course, jobs, the economy of all of concern, and probably one of the paramount issues, at least that polling is indicating, going to be at issue in this election. But also, of course, energy production. I mean, the Permian Basin falls, of course, right within the 23rd, and of course, all the things around it. So, I mean, a lot of things that we see here more in the far West Texas area, we see about the jobs or the upswings and downswings that happen with there. So when it comes to energy production, but then also largely jobs in general, what are some of your focuses if elected to office?
Well, I think people need to know first and foremost that I'm not an energy of the energy and gas sector or the oil and gas sector in Texas. I am proud that Texas 23 is one of the highest energy producing districts in our country, and I would hope to get us to first place. Not only in oil and gas, but in also wind and solar as well. We've got a lot of we have a lot of hot weather and a lot of space out here. And every year our district seems to be getting a little bit hotter and a little bit drier. So we've actually, again, we've had this industry provides tremendous opportunity for us here in Texas 23, in the form of jobs. And I want these jobs to stay here in Texas 23. I want to build stronger pathways to jobs in the oil and the energy industry. So again, I think that's the important thing to understand, that, I'm not trying to shut down. I will always push for cleaner energy. I will always push to capture more carbon, to push to a carbon neutral, because it's better for our environment, especially in an environment that has a lot of hunting tourism, that has a lot of ranching and farming, and that we need clean water and clean air. So, but beyond that, I'm very proud that the Democrats passed the Infrastructure Reduction Act that had a lot of investment in, some natural gas. It has a lot of investment in the wind and solar industry that's going to benefit our district out here. So again, I want to grow it. I want to expand. I think that that is a major. I say in Texas 23, we have enough to fuel the country, fly the country, and feed the country. And those are the three industries that I'm going to work hard to grow here in Texas 23.
Then on the economy in general, of course, been a lot of questions about the state of it, the health of it, a lot of comparisons coming up more recently than not, but particularly when it comes to dealing with it in this terms and in these situations, we are still in this, again, maybe just post-pandemic era, but still a lot of upheavals. We're still seeing a lot of fluctuations, not even consistent enough, though the overall arc of it has been that things have cost more, and that is concerning to a lot of people. So when it comes to inflation and the economic performance overall and the anxiety people seem to be displaying for this election, what are some of the major factors that you are looking at, again, policies if elected to office?
Yeah, and we can't sugarcoat the effects of inflation and rising cost of energy and groceries. This is real. This is tangible. This is the biggest policy that voters are going to the ballot box for. And I think it all begins with making sure that we have a fully employed economy. We've got a lot of jobs that still have not been filled to capacity, especially in our farming, especially in our ranching, especially in our factories out here in West Texas. But the labor shortage is causing a supply shortage, which is causing a rise in demand and higher costs. And plus, we had a lot of foreign goods that were disrupted because of the pandemic, and other countries still trying to catch up. So I think it starts off with jobs. One of my ideas here is opening up a work visa program. This is something similar to the Braceros program of the early 20th century, where we were able to bring emergency farm workers in, seasonal, temporary, but help them boost our farm production so that we can get our products back to the markets. We can get our vegetables, our fruits to the grocery store in more robust quantities, so the prices can drop. Other policies, the Inflation Reduction Act invested heavily in our domestic semiconductor industry. And this is going to be big for us here in West Texas. I don't know if you're aware of this, but Sierra Blanca, they just found a huge ore of rare earth minerals. This is stuff like beryllium. This is stuff that goes into not only stealth technology, but semiconductors and computer chips. So this is going to happen right here in Sierra Blanca, which is a small unincorporated town in Hudspeth County. So imagine the boom of opening up this domestic market right here in Texas 23. So again, we need a member of Congress who needs to take these ideas and these visions to the House floor and work as a partner with these communities so we have smart growth. Because, job growth doesn't look the same for all communities. Some counties want an Amazon warehouse and some don't. Some want a big farm to come in. Some do not have any more room to accommodate a big farm to come in. So this is a diverse and vast district, as you know, and I'm ready to work with smart growth and smart jobs for the people here in Texas 23.
Again, if you're just joining us, guest right now is John Lira, Democratic nominee for the Texas 23rd Congressional District. That is the one that stretches from the eastern bounds of El Paso County to the outskirts of San Antonio. So if you want to find out any more about him, the policies we have been discussing here, his campaign website, liraforcongress.com. That's LIRAFOR Congress.com to find out this and a whole lot more. And of course, one of the ones that you have and a big focus on has definitely been an issue for the 23rd in a lot of different ways. Immigration, border security, all of these wrapped up things. So specifically the way that you have immigration mentioned on there, a lot of focus on, as you kind of mentioned there with the Bracero program, or at least allusions to it, when it comes to legal reform and immigration reform. What are some of your more general policies and not just the kind of work aspect of it that you're looking at when it comes to immigration, particularly as it affects the 23rd?
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And it is the biggest district here in Texas 23 because we have 5 ports and the largest stretch of a U.S. border, of any border. So Texas 23 should have an oversized voice and should be leading in some of the economic. The representative should be leading this policy. But I see 5 issues at play. I see one is outdated asylum and refugee laws. They were written never envisioning 1,000, 5,000, 10,000 people crossing at once. Mm-hmm. So we need to invest in, again, more migrant processing centers, potentially look at some in-country migrant processing centers, so where if they might not be able to apply when they plant 2 feet here in America, but they might be able to do it in Guatemala or in Mexico to start the process. So they're just getting here when their hearing is here. But there's other ideas. Again, we got to fix our legal route to immigration. That's for people who are applying and having to wait 10 years with no response, or folks who have already been here for 10 years and are dreamers and are kind of working in the shadows. If they've been here for that long, they're working class Americans in everything but name. We should invite them formally into our economy. But also we must invest in our work visa program. As I mentioned, we must invest in our ports of entry. We have 5 of them in this district, and billions of dollars of binational trade flows through them every day. So we want to invest in them. We want to make sure that they're capable of keeping out the smugglers, the drug smugglers, the human smugglers, the weapon smugglers. So there is a security aspect to it. In some places, a wall makes sense. In some places, it makes absolutely no sense, like in the Big Bend area.
And then particularly for the Big Bend area, of course, that has not been as much of a focus of this administration, but definitely in the prior one, the focus on physical barriers in general was, of course, a major plank there and was then often being pushed into policy. So when it comes to dealing with the Big Bend, the park there, and of course the natural resources that are there, what kind of policies to be looking at towards specifically the security aspect? I mean, it is diverse terrain. Sometimes it is stark river with actual just sheer rock walls on either side that I've been through. So what would you be pushing for in policy when it comes to the security aspects? Again, the district as a whole, but particularly for Big Bend.
Yeah, I think when it comes to specifically the Big Bend area, there's some areas in the district that are more conducive to migrant crossing in general. And again, do you think what migrants are looking for when they cross? They're looking to get to America so that they can claim asylum, so they can put in an application. So going all the way to Big Bend, where there's not those resources out there and the terrain is a bit rougher, there's a lot of natural cliffs, of natural barriers, natural walls. And then once they get across in the Big Bend area, I mean, they've got to choose between Presidio and Terlingua. I mean, these are very remote, towns as it is, and it's very rough terrain. So it doesn't make much sense, for a significant migrant crossing to work all the way up to the Big Bend area. So my policies would be, I think we would still continue to invest in our border patrol. We want men and women serving their country, serving our borders, serving an important role, and have a little bit more monitors so that they're not as stretched out as before. But I think that, again, the area itself provides a lot of the natural border, and there's no real need for a physical wall there. I think you've seen it. It's beautiful. And, some of those cliffs and, And it's beautifully open like that. We would not want to cut ourselves out of that nature. We would not want to put a fence there and prevent, the rafters and the tourism, the kayakers that go down that route and utilize this beautiful place. So I would say with much of the other stretch of border, again, there's some spots that definitely need it. There's some spots in El Paso, Maverick County, Del Rio, and Valverde County. Even it's starting to get closer to Socorro and El Paso County as well. There's some spots that we want to funnel them. We want to funnel them into a migrant lane that they can go and they can, begin or initiate or handle their asylum processing. But I think overall, in beautiful natural spots, it only makes sense for a physical wall in some areas. And at that point too, I think that we can use, again, a little bit more technology, because when we build the wall, we're also cutting ourselves off to some of these resources and the use of the river as well. So again, why would we want to do that?
One final point I want to get to here, as we're almost out of time here, is one other platform plank you have right at the top of the page, actually, is responsible gun ownership. And you're speaking there of common sense gun reform and your policies there. What are some of the specific things that you would want to see or that you would work on, again, if elected to office?
Yeah, and I'll tell you, this is coming from, again, a United States Marine, somebody who's been trained in both assault rifles and pistols. Somebody that respects the weapon, had to learn the safety rules, had to learn the rules of engagement before I was even allowed to step into battle with one. I've seen what these weapons have done to my enemies and my friends alike on the battlefield. I stand with the Uvalde families. I think one of the basic policy changes that they're asking for is an age increase from 18 to 21. I think that's the first step and one of the most sensible, one of the most agreeable things that we should potentially agree on as a nation, especially with the rise of mass shootings in America. Also, some other ones, I would appreciate how the Safer Community Act had a couple of red flag laws in there. Again, I think every time we have one of these mass shootings, there's always been bread trails and crumbs that this was leading up to this. And none of the community or none of the family or none of the school counselors or the friends had any resources, had any tools to potentially intervene. I mean, even Catholic priests are legally allowed to intervene if their person's life or somebody else's life was at risk, but the community doesn't have the opportunity to do that. So we want to enact more of those. We hope it comes from the state and not the federal, but of course we were ready to act and ready to move. I commend the president's signing of the Safer Communities Act. It's the first gun safety bill in 30 years. But I think, again, I don't think it goes further enough. And here's my main concern with having these weapons in society, period. And we saw this in Uvalde, is that we use a term in the military called fire superiority. These weapons were designed to put more rounds downrange faster and more on target than the enemy. And what this does is gives the average citizen the opportunity to do that to our law enforcement. And we saw that in Uvalde, where one person was able to hold a whole, 19, in some cases 40, in some cases 90, 200, 400, whatever number, held them at bay because, again, this weapon was high velocity, high capacity, high accuracy, and dangerous. So I don't want my law enforcement to have to deal with that by the average citizen. I don't want them to be overwhelmed by these weapons. So, again, we have to ask ourselves a broader question of, do we really want these weapons in society? I've shot them before. They're cool. I would love to go to the firing range and shoot as many as I like and then turn that gun right back in after I'm done. But again, if we did, I would like, again, to see if we do not, above else, this is what I would like to see is enhanced background checks, including mental health, enhanced training like we had for concealed weapon, and then a license like we had for a concealed weapon. If we can enact those three things, those are three more safety nets that might prevent the next Robb Elementary.
Again, if you've just been joining us, guest right now has been John Lira, Democrat nominee for the Texas 23rd Congressional District. Any more information about his policies, positions, beyond the ones that we have been able to discuss here, some of the other ones that he has listed, including veterans and healthcare, livable wages and labor unions, LGBTQA plus rights, pro-choice and reproductive rights, decriminalization of marijuana, and voting rights for all those also on liraforcongress.com. That's LIRA for Congress.com. So, John, thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us today about some of your policies, some of the things affecting this district, and policy, again, going into place if elected into office, all that being discussed here today.
Andrew, thank you so much. And again, a huge shout out to the 690 KTSM crew. I always love tuning in whenever I can. So thank you again for having us on.
And again, thanks to John Lira for that. We're going to have to take that next break. Now, coming out of this break, squeezing in the calls that we can before we close out the show. And, of course, if you weren't able to get on today, Friday is coming. All that and more after this break with more here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Bonds reduced today, even as prosecutors argue that they're a danger to the community. Michael and Mark Shepard are accused of shooting at a group of migrants in a shooting that left one man dead and a woman injured on September 27th near Sierra Blanca. Both men appeared virtually for a bond hearing today for the criminal charges that have been filed against them in Hudspeth County. The brothers are facing manslaughter and assault with a deadly weapon charges. Both men had their bonds reduced, but it's not clear if they bonded out of jail. An El Paso man was arrested and charged for his alleged involvement in the January 6th Capitol riot. The man was identified as 47-year-old David Rene Arredondo. Arredondo was charged with assaulting a law enforcement officer, resisting or impeding law enforcement officers, and interfering with law enforcement officers. He was arrested Wednesday in El Paso. This has been your KFOX 14 News Update. I'm Robert Olguin.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
I-10 eastbound before Loop 375 in the Lower Valley. An earlier crash is still blocking 3 right lanes and 14-minute delays eastbound from Lee Trevino to the Loop. I-10 westbound slow from Hunter Viscount to the 54 Patriot with 11-minute delays. Eastbound Border Highway at Zaragoza, an earlier crash there still has the Zaragoza exit ramp blocked. And an injury accident Lee Trevino northbound before the 10 Gateway at Burnham Drive. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, this is Chief Meteorologist Sandra Diaz. 2 words wrap up our Thursday forecast, and that's warm and windy. All thanks to that cold front that we've been expecting all week. But now for your Friday, you can expect to start the day off with some wind. Then the winds decrease, but that still leaves us with a colder day. The weekend, though, does start to shape up nicely as temperatures begin to rebound. Log on to kfoxtv.com for your latest forecast.
This report is paid for by the Texans for Greg Abbott.
Political ad paid for by Texans for Greg Abbott.
Beto O'Rourke stands with radical groups who want to defund the police. Governor Abbott stands with law enforcement so they can keep Texas families safe. Greg Abbott, Governor.
Did you guys hear the news? Great American Steakhouse has got a new location, located on the west side on Sunland Park Drive. If you haven't stopped by to visit, make sure you do so for lunch, carry out, and yes, even for dinner.
Catch the show in the sky and help support the fight against cancer with the 4th annual Flight to Fight Cancer Research Awareness Fly-In on October 29th at the Doña Ana International Jetport, hosted by Francis Aviation and the War Eagles Air Museum, and powered by News Radio 690 KTSM and Sun 99.9. Kicking off at 10 a.m. with skydiving, airplane exhibitions, car shows, food, vendors, music, and much more. Tickets $10 at the door or on Eventbrite. Children 12 and under get in free. Follow the Flight to Fight on Facebook and Instagram at Cancer Flight. Recognized by the American Cancer Society and a Relay for Life team.
Hey, El Paso, Ivan Ochoa, General Manager of Sunland Park, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat. Right now, our inventory of new and certified pre-owned vehicles is better than ever. So our goal this month is to break our all-time sales record. We'll do whatever it takes to make a deal.
It's Ram Power Days at Sunland Park Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat, and our savings and inventory are huge. Upside down in your current trade? We want it, even if you owe thousands more than it's worth, regardless of make or model. So you can drive home a new or certified pre-owned vehicle for less. For a limited time, get 2.9% APR on the all-new 2022 Ram, or get 0% APR on the all-new 2022 full-size Wagoneer SUV with third-row seating. Plus, we have great financing programs for good credit or less than perfect credit. All military personnel and first responders receive an additional discount. Thank you for your service. Sunland Park Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat, where buying a car is fun. At I-10 at Sunland Park Drive or online at sunlandparkdodge.com. Estamos en tu esquina, El Paso. El Paso Strong. Includes factory rebate and dealer discount plus T10L. 0 APR for 36 months is $27.78 per thousand finance on select vehicles with approved credit. Offers not combined.
Political ad paid for by Texans for Greg Abbott.
Beto O'Rourke stands with radical groups who want to defund the police. Governor Abbott stands with law enforcement so they can keep Texas families safe. Greg Abbott, Governor.
This report is paid for by the Texans for Greg Abbott.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for having tuned in here for Talk El Paso. As promised, going to try to get a couple more calls on the line here. But, of course, Friday is coming, so if we aren't quite able to get to that, make sure to be on the line there tomorrow with us here. So let's just jump straight into some of those we do have. Raul in the Northeast on the line with us here right now. Raul, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Andrew. Good interview from Congressman Escobar, who lived through Trump's mob attack and coup on the Constitution Congress at the Capitol. What a nightmare at Trump's instigation. She and many others came close to possibly being murdered. What a memory for her, huh? I'm voting to reelect Judge Samaniego. He did a great interview also, and I'm impressed by his education and experience. 3 masters and one from Notre Dame in international economics. Wow. He's a much better qualified candidate in experience and education than his Republican opponent. I ran for office, and campaign signs are expensive, and people who take them are stealing. Now, Trump stole $500,000 from the city of El Paso, and similarly large amounts from other 7 other cities in unpaid rally security costs. Now, someone should ask Judge Samaniego's Republican opponent if she would sue Trump if he stiffed the county for $500,000 in unpaid rally security costs that he would contract to pay. On another front, another school shooting 2 days ago in St. Louis. That's the 40th school shooting so far this year. Another gun nut killing with an assault weapon and armed to the teeth. Texas is number 1 in school massacres and number 1 in forcible rapes. Such a great job, Governor Abbott. Republicans have sacrificed America's kids at the altar of the gun so that gun nuts can have their arsenals. Gun and ammunition manufacturers should be taxed for the cost of hardening schools with the security personnel and equipment.
I mean, if you want to talk about policy, sure. But, I mean, just to make a finer point of it here, a lot of details probably still coming about that situation you noticed here. But is it the people that you're referring to as the gun nuts that are the one that are causing the situation? Or is it other really serious problems that we need to address within this country here? Time for one more quick call. We do have Tony on the west side here with us right now. Tony, thanks for joining us.
I know I don't have much time. I'll try to make it real quick. Look, I want to expose Veronica Escobar for the deceiver that she is, okay? Remember the acronym COM. First of all, to use comprehensive immigration as an excuse for them not to secure the border. That's number 1. Number 2, she used the word only, that Republicans only want to talk about border security. That's not true. We want to talk about border security first, not only, but first, and they refuse to do that. And then the M, she uses migrants instead of illegal immigrants. So under humanity, under humanism, under wanting to be humane, they allow what's happening at the border. That's how they sleep at night, by saying we're being humane. She said, we are a nation of immigrants. She leaves out the word, very conveniently, legal immigrants. So those are 4 examples of the deception and the example of how vile this person is by twisting words and changing words. As I've already given the example, I wish I could repeat it. I don't know how much time I got, Andrew, you tell me, but please memorize COME. She talks about comprehensive, and the reason we don't do comprehensive is because it includes a pathway to citizenship and an amnesty. They want more Democrat voters. That's what they call comprehensive. And because we don't do it as Republicans, they blame it on us. So don't be deceived. She's a deceiver. And
tell you what, we'll have to leave it there for today here. So we'll, of course, get more on these points here tomorrow on the program. We're just super out of time here for this show. Don't worry. Tomorrow we'll be squeezing in probably one quick interview, but otherwise both hours of the show will be there for the talking and the discussion here. So I want to thank everyone that did tune in, call in, comment, participate in the show. Even if I disagree with you, the discussion here is what makes this work and actually talking about the important issues that affect us here in the borderlands. So have to leave it there for today. Want to thank everyone again. Did tune in, call in, comment, do all those things. Stay safe out there. Look twice for motorcycles when out on the road, and have a great evening, y'all. We'll see you tomorrow.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
I-10 eastbound before Loop 375 in the lower valley. An earlier crash is still blocking 3 right lanes and 14-minute delays eastbound from Lee Trevino to the Loop. I-10 westbound slow from Hunter Viscount to the 54 Patriot with 11-minute delays. Eastbound border highway at Zaragoza, an earlier crash there still has the Zaragoza exit ramp blocked. And an injury accident Lee Trevino northbound before the 10 gateway at Burnham Drive. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is paid for by the Texans for Greg Abbott.
Political ad paid for by Texans for Greg Abbott.
Beto O'Rourke stands with radical groups who want to defund the police. Governor Abbott stands with law enforcement so they can keep Texas families safe. Greg Abbott, Governor.
Politicians have led us down the wrong path. Record inflation and cost of living, unsafe border communities, a war on oil and gas jobs. Enough is enough. Catherine Parker will uphold our Texas values. A successful businesswoman and rancher, Catherine Parker will lower inflation and our cost of living. Catherine Parker will work to permanently lower your property taxes. Catherine Parker will stand up to the radicals who threaten our values and put our families in harm's way. Catherine Parker will secure our border communities and fully fund border security. Catherine Parker will stand with law enforcement and against those who want to defund our police, because our communities deserve to be safe. And Catherine Parker will defend the oil and gas jobs that power our communities. Truth, freedom, prosperity. Vote Catherine Parker for District 74 on November 8th. Political ad paid for by Catherine Parker Campaign.
Portions of the following program were pre-recorded.
News on the hour and a half. Traffic and weather all day. News Radio 690 is KTSM AM El Paso, an iHeart radio station.
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook. President Biden says the new Micron Technology computer chip fabrication plant is one of the most significant